Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Ready for an adventure? Whether you're revisiting cherished moments or planning new escapades, Nostalgic Travel Talks is here to inspire your wanderlust. Let's take off. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this episode today. I'm here with Dr. Veronica Flake, who is a doctor who had the opportunity to study in Cuba. And if you recall, a couple episodes ago, I interviewed Dr. Gigi Simmons, who is a colleague of hers. So, welcome, Dr. Flake, and I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. What first inspired you to study medicine in general, and then maybe you can expound on that and talk about Cuba.
Oh, hi, thank you so much for having me. So a bit about myself. I'm a Philadelphia native. I have an interest in languages, reproductive health, global health, and medicine. So I've always had interests and desires to become a doctor. I have my composition book from, I believe I was roughly 7 years old. And in it, I wrote, I am going to become a doctor. So it was just something that was innate in me. I was looking to apply to medical school abroad, particularly South America or in the Caribbean, but not Cuba. And at the time, I had a coworker when I lived in the Midwest who mentioned that she thought I would be a good candidate for the medical school program in Cuba. And at the time, I was very naive and I just didn't know much about Cuba in regards to whether or not Americans could travel there. So I thought I couldn't go. And I told her no. I mean, she was pretty insistent that she thought it would be a great fit for me based on my work experiences and my like global health experience as far as travel. And she recommended that I watch a documentary, which is called Salud, which explains very thoroughly about the medical program in Cuba. I remember watching the documentary and I was floored, and I just knew I was going to figure out how to apply it and go to medical school in Cuba, which is how I ended up studying medicine in Cuba.
That's amazing. And what year was that you started?
You're aging me here, Cheryl. It was
Oh, sorry.
2009. Yeah, so I watched the documentary in 2000, beginning of 2008, and I started medical school in 2009, the fall of 2009.
hmm And I'm just curious. I'm jumping ahead, so I apologize for that. But does this program still exist? In
Yes, the
and
medical program still exists. So Latin American School of Medicine located in Havana, Cuba.
Mhm.
Yes,
Okay, so it's much the same as it was when you were studying.
yeah, so it's the largest medical school in the world. It's very international. There's students from well over 150 countries throughout. It's a 6-year program, as my colleague mentioned in a previous episode,
Mhm.
and it's fully funded by the Cuban government for American students. At the time we were studying there were different parameters as far as which students from which countries could receive full scholarship. And as Gigi mentioned previously, at times some of the scholarships per country maxed out and some certain students had to pay a certain amount out of pocket for their medical studies, which would likely be cheaper than their home countries. And keep in mind, there are many countries globally who have lack of medical schooling or lack of specialty care. So, for example, places such as Belize, they don't have many specialists, or maybe a bit more difficult to become a doctor or to go to medical school. So, lots of students travel from Central America to Cuba to study medicine.
hmm Oh, okay. It's a great it's something obviously it's very much needed, especially in countries that are underserved.
Yes.
So they're doing a great service. What was it like adjusting to life and medical school in Cuba?
Well, that's a very compounded question, because I always say in Cuba, we were living in a bubble within a bubble. We were obviously, if you're not Cuban, then you're a foreigner, clearly. But when you're an American in Cuba, it's a different type of way of existing in Cuban society. And if you are of a particular ethnicity, in my case, African American, it's even more particular because many times walking down the street, folks would ask if I was from Jamaica, Venezuela, Honduras, Haiti. You just really didn't know. And then once you were more comfortable saying that you were American, and folks from Cuba, oh, Americana, mi gente, we were very well received. Adjusting to life in Cuba it's a process. In particular, it's a process for anyone if you go to any country that is not of your country of origin. So you have your culture shock, and I always say Cuba is is it's very it's very Cuban. So it has particularities from America, given its proximity to Miami, in particular, Florida, or just US. It's very Latino, Hispanic. It's very Cuban itself, and it's very global. So it was you had to really adjust to like the Cuba way and Cuban lifestyle of living, whether it's the Spanish, and I was fluent in Spanish prior to attending medical school in Cuba, but Cuban Spanish is its own particular language, and it's its own particular dialect, and it's very fast. We were in Havana, which I always say is the New York City of Cuba. So we say la mecánica cubana, like the Cuban mechanics, you really have to know, especially in Havana. The word cucumber is a cucumber in the United States, but in Cuba, pepino, a cucumber is a big bottle of water, a pomito de agua. So
Oh,
it's just learning the Cubanism or the how to be like a habanera, like a of someone who can, maneuver Havana. So it
hmm.
took a while to adjust to whether it's the heat and humidity, because it's unlike any heat and humidity I've ever experienced in my life. And I
Really?
think it's warmer, it's hotter than places I've been to in Africa. It's
Hmm.
very hot, it's very humid for many hours of the day. You have to adjust to being uncomfortable, whether it's not having light electricity for a few hours or a day, or sometimes a few days at a time, water, having to store your water, thinking about how are you going to buy your vegetables? How are you going to store them? Would you have water to clean them? Would you have electricity to keep certain things that are perishable okay without, if your refrigerator does not have electricity, what do you do? So it's just learning how like to live a lo cubano, as we say. It was an adjustment. And I had spent time in South America, various countries, and I was actually in Colombia, South America, prior to moving to Cuba. And I thought I'd be okay because I just assumed everywhere in Latin America is the same. And it wasn't. So no, that was a major adjustment. And little by little, you learn to adjust to the Cuban lifestyle, and then it just becomes a part of you. And then just medical school is medical school. But Cuban medical school, it's like a different beast. You're learning in Spanish. I was bilingual. Spanish is still not my first language. So you're giving presentations about biomedical pathways in Spanish. You are doing rounds in Spanish. And sometimes you can become self-conscious because your colleagues or our classmates, like a lot of them were from Spanish-speaking countries. So of course they were more comfortable, during their case presentations or presenting patients, doing rounds, etc. And you just have to learn just how to study and be uncomfortable sometimes studying or doing your rounds. We're rounding with the team on internal medicine, a team of 15 folks with attendings, residents, fellows, and medical students. And you have to wear a white coat. So in Cuba, you have to wear a uniform. It's very hot. There's most of the time no air conditioning, depending on what unit you are, except for most of the time in the ICU, we had AC. So you had to just learn how to like just be like you had to be learn a lot of grit in Cuba.
Hmm.
And I just there are many moments of like culture shock, but that's any country you go to. But I think Cuba is a particularly different place. And if you haven't been there, it's hard to encapsulate it until you experience it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine learning like and it's like I don't even know how to put this into words. Like you're learning how to be a doctor, but you're also having to become fully fluent in a second language at the same time. That's like
Yeah. And I
it's
always say that we have colleagues from Mongolia. I
hmm.
have colleagues from Mongolia and Cuba who end up leaving. We all end up sounding like a Cuban. So everyone, even for those who know little Spanish, by the time you finish your 6 or 7 years there, you're fluent because we don't have a choice. You
Hmm.
have you have to buy your groceries. You have to go pay your electricity bill. You have to study. You have to take your classes. You have to figure out how to take the bus or ask someone in walking down the street, how do I get to ABC place?
Hmm.
So you learn and then you just become very Cubanized. Even
Hmm.
folks in Latin America become very Cubanized. And even to this day, people still think I'm Cuban when I speak Spanish. A lot of people.
I'm not surprised. And
Yeah.
and it's just so funny because just thinking about how just that's the most amazing way to learn any, just to
Yeah.
be dropped in a country and you don't have a choice. You're forced to, you know, to become fluent and the benefit is that you're getting, your degree in medicine as well. So,
Agree. And then like Gigi mentioned, like you're not just living in Cuba studying medicine there, you're in society.
Mm-hmm.
Same medical curriculum that we had, our Cuban medical colleagues who are our classmates we had. And you go to folks' homes, you meet folks, we do house calls. So you're really ingrained into the Cuban society as well. And you learn a lot of mannerisms, or you just learn a lot of cultural things you would not particularly have received if I was, say, if I was a foreign medical graduate who had come to medical school in the United States, it wouldn't be similar.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I just love that. I'm a retired Spanish teacher, so and
Um,
I have been on my head to go to Cuba. I don't know if it'll
You
happen,
have
but
to. Well, yeah, you can still go. I love Spanish. My favorite language outside. Yeah. So,
but
um,
I mean, and I think that for me, the difficulty would be definitely just the accent, just the because it's
well,
so different.
very different and of the Spanish accents from like the Caribbean islands when you can consider like when you compare Cuba, Puerto Rico, and República Dominicana, Dominican Republic,
Hmm.
Cuban is like the fastest.
Hmm.
But I always say if you can understand Cuban accent, like you can understand any Spanish accent in the world. And the positive of the many positives we had is that we have colleagues from literally every country in Latin America.
Hmm.
So I can point out a Colombian accent, Mexican, Paraguayan, Uruguayan, Chilean, because we were interacting with our classmates and our colleagues every day. So you were hearing various accents, and then you're still existing within Cuba. But yeah, we all left on the same plane. And this Havana Spanish is not like if you go to like Cienfuegos, or if you go to like Santo Espiritus, if you go into, we call it el interior, like so eastern parts of the island, the Spanish is clearer.
Hmm.
It's like being in New York City and then going to Mississippi. So
Oh,
folks speak clearer, slower, they enunciate more. Havana
hmm.
has like, it's like a New York City pace. So it's like we have to get stuff done. Let's go. What are we wasting time on? But learning that accent, you can understand it. But you'll be fine.
Yeah, and it makes you so much stronger too. Just that type of immersion just makes you so much stronger. Like
Yeah,
you
I
said,
mean,
being able to
Cuba,
understand.
I mean, not just Spanish, but just life, it makes you very resilient.
Hmm. Oh,
It's
definitely.
it makes, yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Was there any specific patient or moment during your training that has stayed with you?
I mean, there are lots of moments I remember often. One of my favorite cases, and well, in Cuba, I should just say that we don't have a lot as far as medical technology and things of that sort. So we use what our best resources are: our ears, eyes, hands, and our stethoscope. And on a I was on a 24-hour call when I was on internal medicine my last year there, and I had a patient, and I just did a lung exam on him, and I knew that he had asthma exacerbation also, where it superimposed pneumonia based on his symptoms that he mentioned to me and his physical exam findings. This was even before I ordered an X-ray, just because in Cuba we had to be really stringent and really cognizant of how many X-ray films or images we ordered, because we only had sometimes 10 films per shift.
Mhm.
Um, so the patient, and I remember him because he was actually my neighbor, he received his asthma treatment, and then he left. And I let him know. I was like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure you still have pneumonia. Let's get an X-ray for you." And he's like, "No, I feel fine." And then I saw him the next day, and his wife came back with him, and I don't know why he still doesn't feel well. And I was like, "Yes, because I told him I think he has asthma exacerbation on top of his pneumonia," and he did. And I actually ran into him one day going back to the hospital when he was on his bike, and he saw me and he thanked me. So there's so many of those instances that you recall and you remember, and it's good because that gives you more confidence in your clinical judgment. But that just goes to show how well we were trained to use what at times, minimal resources that we did have. But there are many occasions patients I deliver their babies and they see me walking down the street and they say hi and show, say, "Do you remember me? You deliver me?" Yes, of course.
Hmm.
There was another like a patient I had. She had a twin sister. The patient actually ended up dying from lung cancer, and her twin sister was an artisan. And this is actually the artwork that she gave me my
Oh
last
my
year.
goodness.
So this is handmade.
Hmm.
Yeah, so this is the
That's
sister.
beautiful.
Yeah. So, like you just little gestures like that, and you always keep them, I always keep them with me. But there's countless instances. But those are the main ones that like still stick with me, because sometimes when you're doubting yourself as far as
Hmm.
like and because you're a new doctor, and I was a young doctor, and I was confident that I knew that it was an asthma exacerbation as well as pneumonia. So that felt good.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think even though you were low on resources, I think that's another thing that would make you stronger as a doctor, because even when you come back to the United States and you practice, you not that you can't use them, but you don't have to rely on all of
Yeah.
those resources to do good
Yeah.
medicine.
Yeah, and it's just because again, we work with what we have down there. Sometimes you may not have, electricity that you need to see an X-ray image or to be, so you have to use what you have. So your greatest tool is always your stethoscope and your hands. And
Hmm.
then,
Wow. That's that's pretty impressive. Um, so how did the Cuban approach to medicine shape your philosophy as a doctor today?
well, in Cuba, we go by the biopsychosocial model, so the biological, psychological, and so model and medicine. So medicine is not just what symptoms you're coming with. It's biological, it's psychological, and it's social. What neighborhood do you live in? For me, I live in, New York City, or it doesn't matter where you live these days. Every time I see a patient, I always, what country did you grow up in? Because that can affect you in a multitude of ways. Where did you grow up? What country did you grow up? What neighborhood did you grow up in? What's your education level like? When's the last time you talked to a family member? When's the last time you've gone home to see your parents or your family in Dominican Republic? All that can affect your like physical state of being. So we always keep that in mind.
Mhm.
Is your neighborhood polluted? Is there noise pollution in your neighborhood? So we were trained that way in Cuba. Do you live on a route where there's, a lot of bus traffic? Is that, the fumes from the bus in your area, etc., causing as, making your asthma symptoms be exacerbated. So it just shapes my philosophy in that way. And you always see people as like a person first and not as like a medical record number.
Hmm.
So you
Okay.
always want to see them like as a person and just to get to know them. And it just makes you more like more empathetic, and you want to be like we say in Cuba, like una doctor de conciencia, like a doctor of like conciencia, ciencia y conciencia. It's like a doctor of like science and conscious,
Hmm.
you know. So you can't just approach medicine from just what I read in the textbook and what I read in a board exam and approach it to medicine that way. Each
Hmm.
person is individualized.
Right. So like a holistic approach to.
Very holistic, very integrative.
Hmm.
It's preventative medicine focused, but it's holistic, it's integrative. No two folks from the same home have the same experience or the same outcome most of the time, even with the same parents. And this, you know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
that's the way I approach, everyone I see,
Hmm.
every patient.
Do you think any is I don't know how to word this. Do you think that they're like if you had done your education in the United States that you would be the same doctor you are?
I don't think so. I wouldn't have had the experience of living in Cuba. Like that alone, if you take medical school out of the picture, just living in Cuba for 6 years alone, I wouldn't be the same person because you're three different people. All of us who went to school in Cuba, we're three different people. You have the Cuba you, I'm sorry, you have the pre-Cuba you
Hmm.
have the Cuba you, and the post-Cuba you.
Hmm.
So it's impossible. It's not possible. And I would think majority of, if not all of my colleagues who I've studied would have similar, thoughts.
Hmm. Okay. Well, so I'm sure you're very thankful that person was very insistent with you,
Yes,
persistent about.
yes. If she ever hears this, yes, Stacy, yes, she changed my life. Yes.
Wow. Um, what's something most people don't realize about the Cuban healthcare system? Or I should say most people in the United States don't realize.
I mean, I think the humanity of it, that's a difficult question because it's so much that you don't realize, but you don't know. But I think the most pressing thing that folks don't realize is how like humanistic it is.
Hmm.
Remember, we have Cuban doctors who are all over the world. So it's just, so Cuban, and we have physicians that are trained all over the world from Cuba.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a very like humanistic, empathetic, not to say that, American healthcare system is not, but it's a certain Cubanismo like touch to it that is really difficult to explain. But I think like the Cuban way you approach patients in medicine, I think that's what a lot of folks may not be aware of if you don't know anyone who studied there or have not heard about the program.
Hmm. Okay. Well, the things that I've heard about it so far between you and Gigi, I'm just blown away
Yeah.
by just how great it is. And, you know, not even realizing that. I mean, I knew that Cuba had an excellent educational system, but I just didn't realize the amount or the impact that they had on worldwide healthcare.
Yeah, and it's just not healthcare. I have friends from countries throughout Africa, Caribbean who study architecture in Cuba, like
Mhm.
nursing, art, music, fine arts. You'd be surprised. So Cuba is you'd be surprised. It's educated folks globally, just not Americans, and just I mean every corner of the world. Most of the time, the Cuban education system has touched in some way. But
Mhm.
the pedagogy of the healthcare system is very streamlined. It's and it's very it's detailed, but it's 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 hard to see the forest through the trees until you're at the end of your studies. And
I can imagine.
it all makes sense because going into a 6 to 7 year commitment in Cuba is not for the faint of heart. And it's a long, hard road. And you get to the end and then you're sad it's over because you reflect back. And we all think about every day.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, it's just always in you. I'm always talking about Cuba. And all like the values, and it's just everything. Most of the time when I approach a problem in life, I approach it from the angle of what would I have done in Cuba, or what did I learn from Cuba that would help me get through this.
Hmm.
Yeah, so in Cuba there's a phrase that is no es fácil, pero tampoco es difícil. So
Mm.
it's not easy, but it's also not difficult.
Hmm. So basically, you can do it. You can do, you know,
Yeah,
whatever
you can.
you
It
set
might
your
be
mind
tough, rough, but you can do it.
to.
Yeah.
So, I understand that you've been back to Cuba several times.
Yeah. I've been back to Cuba many times. So I do global public health teaching. So I've been fortunate enough to I have like a dear mentor, a colleague of mine who I actually met in Cuba. So we facilitate and coordinate summer study abroad programs for undergraduate, graduate students, and medical students, particularly in Cienfuegos, Cuba. But I've been back to Havana and Cienfuegos many times since graduating.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. And when you do you go back with former I don't want to say colleague former classmates, I should say, or is it just wide?
For our study abroad programs, it's not with classmates. I have not been back with my You mean my American classmates or my non-American classmates or just
Or
any?
your people that you went to school with while you were here?
So no,
Did
I
they?
haven't been back with anyone I went to school with. I have been back with friends I made in Cuba just by living there.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I I know Gigi told me that I don't remember how many years before you can go off campus and
Oh,
live
so
with.
our first 2 years we were in a naval base out in Santa Fe and Baracoa, which is roughly 45 minutes outside of Havana. So we were there for 2 years doing our basic sciences. And then after your second year, for your third and sixth year, depending on what country you're from, will determine which part of the island you'll be based at for your final 4 years. So
Mhm.
as Gigi mentioned, we were American students, mostly American students were located in Havana.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you did you now maybe I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. So you if you decide to you can just live with you can have a host family. Is that something that's arranged by the
No, not
school or you
particularly.
just
We have housing, and some folks find like housing by other means, but we don't have
Mhm.
a. It's not a host family like you would maybe like I had a host family when I was in Ecuador. No, it's
Mhm.
not. No,
Not
so
the
we have
same?
like campus housing for the most part.
Oh, okay. Very nice. So, so when you were able to get off of you said the naval base, when you
Yeah,
left,
but it was a formal naval base.
uh-huh,
If
right.
but it was formal, yeah. So as Gigi mentioned, we had quite a few roommates. You
Hmm.
know, yeah.
Okay. So then when you went, so when you went off to your different destination. Which one did you prefer? Did you prefer being with your classmates or with
Um,
the
I'm a city person.
uh-huh.
And I really enjoyed the final 4 years because I was able to see like the true essence of Havana. When we were on for our first 2 years, when we were, in the outer skirts of Havana, we did have time, as Gigi mentioned, to leave campus to get into the city to see things. But it was nothing like living and being in Havana, like the rhythm, the flow, the music, the sounds, the people, um, just the el ritmo, the rhythm of the city. You just like the heartbeat. I really enjoyed that.
Okay. And do you get to see some of the same, when you go back for your visits, do you get to see some of those people that you met?
Of course, everyone has a Cuban family, entre comillas, like quote unquote. We all have family friends. I have patients who became my family.
Uh-huh.
One of my favorite patients when she was, they were brother and sister. They were 11, 12-ish or so, maybe a bit younger or older. On one of my pediatric patients, they invited me to their birthday party, and they're still my family years later. And now they're in their 20s. So I see folks, and I'm someone who really has an affinity for elderly individuals. So I had so many abuelos in Cuba, and some have moved on. They have transitioned, which is sad, and it's hard because we don't have that great of communication with the older folks on the island. So some folks you just don't know they're gone until you return and they're not there.
Mhm.
And I still, am in touch with like my favorite professors, as much as I can be. A lot of them have WhatsApp or Facebook, which is nice. Yeah, so I see folks all the time. And even the most like unlikely person to know you will remember you because, we always stand out. We, as in anyone who is not Cuban,
Mhm.
there and go back to old neighborhoods or even on campuses and folks you may not remember, but they remember you. It's nice to go back and it's nice to go back, having you know, on the other side of medical school and residency, it is nice to do that. And they're very proud, always proud. Just
Mhm. So it sounds like a family reunion. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's always, it's hard to not. That's just the Cuban way. I always say, here in America, things are very structured, and we're all very busy, and you have to have, you know, 25 texts between friends, and it takes 3 months to schedule a brunch date. One time I went to Cuba, and I went to Havana, and I got to the city late, and I just went to one of my family's homes, and it was 1 in the morning. The dog was so excited to see me, and I wanted the dog to bark to wake someone up, and she didn't. She just wagged her tail, and I put my hand in the window, and I, just yelled, "Consuelo!" Like and they were like, "Veronica, you're here," and they turned the lights on, and it was just, it's very Cuban. Like it was 1:30 in the morning.
uh-huh.
They were excited to see me, turn the lights on, of course, offer coffee. That's the Cuban way, and that would never happen here. So those are things that always stick with you.
That sounds amazing. And so obviously you've met other doctors during your time in Cuba. Um, how many, like, how did your friendships grow? Like, obviously you're still really good friends with Gigi.
Yeah.
Do you have that same type of relationship with other doctors?
Yeah,
Close.
of course. Yeah, American as well as not. I mean, for Americans to study medicine in Cuba, you have to be a particular and special type of person. So our class, we are very close in class. I'm in contact with a lot of folks, and I always say we were there during like the Cuban like gold rush kind of, right? We were there right before things opened up, with Obama being when he was in the White House. And things just flourished. It was a very exciting time to be in Cuba. So there was a lot of action, and we flourished, and those relationships continue because we are in contact with a lot of our colleagues. So my best friend from medical school was Belizean, and that's one of my dearest friends on earth. I vacationed in Belize last year. Anytime I want to go, I can. And I'm in contact with another one of my best friends is British but lives in Scotland. I met her at a really cool cafe in Havana. She's not a medical student, but we became close friends. So there's like people and places I would have never met or gone to had I not gone to Cuba. And even within the US, like if you're traveling for a residency interview, I've stayed with Gigi when I
Mhm.
interviewed in Los Angeles for residency. I've stayed with friends from medical school, friends from Detroit. I've stayed there as well. So it takes you globally, And because we have such a particular bond, it's like more familiar like, and it's just an experience that like no one else has experienced the way we have, and you can't replicate that experience. So you're just bonded no matter what. And we
Mhm.
still reach out to each other, whether we have, just advice or questions or to reminisce. We do that a lot as well.
Mhm. That must be so amazing to have just global friendships.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
could just, I'm guessing here, but could you
yeah.
just like point to a place on the map and say, oh, hey, I could go here if I wanted to go here. I
Yeah, I
know
can go to
somebody.
Belize, Mongolia, Venezuela, Canada,
Uh-huh. That is amazing.
England. Yeah, and so many places I'm just connected to because I went to school in Cuba.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is so cool. I mean, I would love for, I don't know, just for people in general to be able to travel that way so they could learn more about the world instead of
Yeah,
just being in their own bubble,
yeah.
whether it's the United States or any place, just,
Yeah.
just so people could get an idea of how other people live.
Mhm.
What's the biggest lesson you've carried from Cuba into your practice today?
The biggest lesson. Always listen to the patient. And
Hmm.
always listen to the patient, but getting a good history. If
Hmm.
you good history, 80% of your battle is over. So a very thorough and detailed history and physical exam. That's just how we're trained. So always get a very thorough history and a very detailed physical, but and meeting the patient where they are.
Hmm. Okay. Um, if a young student said they were considering studying medicine abroad, especially in Cuba, what advice would you give them?
Just to be like very open, adaptable, malleable. You have to be able to be uncomfortable and lean into discomfort. And as Americans, it's hard. It's hard for all of us.
Hmm.
Um, you want when you want how you want it when you want it. And that's just not
Oh.
how like functions in Cuba. So you have to be very, very flexible as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I can certainly imagine how hard that would be for any American. Well, and
Mhm.
just dealing with a different way of life, not just language, but just without the comforts of home, without
Yeah,
the
so you don't
ease
have
of.
the comforts, the technology. When we were there, there was very little technology. Cuba's a bit more technologically advanced now, but it was a time we checked internet once a week at 12:30 at night, you know, for an hour. And it was spotty, it was dial up, you
Mhm.
know. So you have to just learn how to have far less access to technology. But the beautiful side of that was you're talking to people more, you're in the community, you have to like pick up a book and read. You can't just Google what you want. Things have changed there now, but during our time, it was a bit different. So
Hmm.
we really had to lean into community, your classmates, your colleagues, and our classmates. In particular, the first 2 years, we had to lean on each other a lot.
Hmm. I can imagine. Wow. Well, I guess I'm gonna just do my best to figure out how I'm gonna get there.
Yeah, you should. Highly recommend.
I would love to go there with you and Gigi. That would be fun.
Make it happen.
I'm gonna work on it.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So I have a few questions here,
Okay.
and let's see. I think I know the answer to this first question I'm going to ask you. Coffee in the US or coffee in Cuba?
I'm gonna put a twist on this. Cuba and Colombia.
Ah, okay, the two best.
Yes, my some of my favorites. Yes.
Hmm. Okay. So like when you're here, do you even drink coffee here? When
Every
you're
day.
even though, the reason I ask is because like I know that I've gone places and I've had, for example, I remember going to Italy and having carbonara
Hmm.
and I don't know, and then I come back here and I'm like, oh, that was so good, I'm gonna try it. And I go someplace that's highly recommended and it's just like, this is
Not
just
good.
such a
Yeah.
letdown.
Well, I mean, when I go to Cuba, obviously I bring cubita back, which is Cuban coffee, and some of my close friends who are like my dear family are Colombian. So I typically keep a nice stash of Colombian coffee
Mhm.
around, which can hold me over. but yeah, I understand the sentiments is not the same.
Yeah, it's like chasing a high.
Yes.
What is your favorite Cuban dish?
Arroz con gris with some vianda. So con gris is like rice and beans, or in Cuba it's either arroz con gris or moros y cristianos, some more than Christians.
Hmm.
That with like vianda, it's like a yuca, etc. With like pescado frito, like fried fish
Hmm.
with lime. And people like to put like little small cucumber tomato slices on your food.
Uh-huh. Now, do
Yeah.
you know how to make Cuban dishes?
I do. Yeah, but it's not the same as being there. Like yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I personally I'm not a great cook at anyway to
Mhm.
begin with, but I have tried. I know how hard it is to try and replicate something. And but I think the good thing about that is it's something to look forward to when you go back.
Return always. Yes.
Yeah. How about the most surprising country that you visited?
Hmm. The Gambia.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The
In what
Gambia.
way? How was it surprising?
I always call Gambia, it's like kind of like the little engine that could. Have you been to West Africa?
No, I
Yes.
haven't.
So Gambia is a very slither, a tiny country that's surrounded by Senegal. And in such they have very stark and different societies because Gambia was colonized by the British, Senegal by the French, and it's just they're very similar, but very, very different. It was just, I had an experience there last summer. It was just amazing. It just took me by surprise when I actually really got to like know the people, learn some of the lingo, and there's so many languages spoken there. So I knew a little Wolof, a little Serre, to get around. But it was it's very beautiful. But it was a very surprising country for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm, you know, this is just so amazing to listen to this. You're so well-rounded and just all of these great experiences that you've had.
Thank
It's just
you.
really nice to listen to.
You.
What is the passport stamp that you're most proud of?
Cuba. Yes,
Because you worked hard for that one.
I worked hard for it. We all worked very hard. 6 years is not easy anywhere. 6 years in Cuba is definitely not easy. We've all, it wasn't an easy road, but looking back, I is one of like the most transformative like experiences I've had, and it definitely, shaped who I am. So I'm very proud of
Mhm.
my multiple Cuban passport stamps.
As you should be. I mean, just imagine like it's one thing, it's tough enough going to medical school in
Yeah.
your native language, but then to compound it with a second language is just
Yeah. And just, we're not even talking about coming home in the summers and bringing 4 100-pound suitcases to Cuba.
oh my goodness.
Bringing textbooks, you're bringing clothes, computers, things for loved ones, toiletries. And most of us were not going home, during the school year. So I would go to Cuba in August or September and not come back to the United States until July the following year.
Yeah.
So I remember one time I was packing, she was like, "Why are you packing so many tubes of toothpaste? Is
Hmm.
there nothing in Cuba?" I was like, I have to pack this way because I'm not coming back. And there's not access to the same resources that we have here.
Hmm.
So it was a tough road. We had to clear through customs, through various countries. A lot of us had to travel through Mexico to go to Cuba. So you clear in customs twice with 400 pounds of luggage, and you're answering the same questions, and you're worried about missing your flight. If you miss your flight, you're stuck in Mexico, or you're stuck in Cancun for a day, and that money adds up. You know,
Hmm.
and as you're not seeing your family, so it's a sacrifice. You miss funerals. I miss, a dear loved one passed away while I was there. I couldn't come home. You
Hmm.
miss birth, you miss parties, things happen. You miss things culturally. It's a cultural gap.
Yeah.
Even now, when some music I hear and my friends like, oh, this is our song back in the day. And I was like, did this come out between 2009 and 2015? Because that's why I don't know some of the cultural references I don't know, or my friends have to fill me in because we're not here.
That is
Yes, and
wild.
it's a
I
huge
didn't even think of
sacrifice.
that.
It's a huge sacrifice for your family as well. And then, like, because they don't really know you because you change so much the more you come back each summer.
Hmm.
And so your family's trying to get to know you, but you're this different person, but you're you, but not really. And it's very interesting. Yeah. So that's my most proud passport stamp because it was what worked. I worked very hard for that.
Oh my goodness. That
Yeah.
is just, yeah, I hadn't even thought about the fact that you would have to be there for so long. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Some folks remember we have classmates who came from as far as Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, flights home $3,000 or $4,000 can't afford that. So some folks stay for a year or two before they can even go home to see their family members. That wasn't the case for us, luckily, because we're our proximity to the U.S.'s proximity to Cuba. But you have to keep all that in mind. It's so and you really have to rely on like Cubans
mhm,
because or if you run out of your funds and you don't no one's sending you funds. One time I didn't have any sugar.
mhm.
Neighbor gladly gave me half a pound of sugar. So things like that. Like my partner, I remember I was, financially strapped for a little while.
Mhm.
$83. That $3 felt like 300 at the time. But at the time with $3 in Cuba, you could buy a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Man, that is just listening to this makes
Yeah.
me, I just want to be transported.
Yeah, we were there during a very special time. Things are different there now, obviously, given, the state of the world, post-COVID, etc. So we
Mhm.
were there during a very it was a special time to be there for sure for our class. Yeah.
Wow. Such great memories. That is,
Yeah.
um, let's see. One last question I have for you. Who was your most fun travel buddy?
Myself.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it.
So yeah, so most of the time I'm a solo traveler, most of the time, unless
Uh-huh.
I'm, doing like, study abroad groups, but I am my most fun travel buddy.
That
So
is
I'm
great.
going to see my friends in other countries, which is basically the people I've met in Cuba, that I visit globally, or just other countries I like to go to as well.
Hmm. Well, you can always depend on yourself. That's for
Yeah,
sure, you know?
yeah,
That's great.
it's true. Yes.
Well, I thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you about Cuba, and I'm hoping that we can, I don't know if it'll be possible, because I told Gigi she's always welcome back to come and talk to me. I would love to have the two of you together.
I would absolutely enjoy that. So let's make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
Yes,
Well,
thank
I
you so much.
appreciate
I really appreciate it. It was wonderful talking to you.
you as well. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Nostalgic Travel Talks. I hope today's episode inspired you to dive deeper into your next journey. If you enjoyed our conversation, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. And if you want even more insider tips, exclusive travel deals, and personal stories, be sure to sign up for my newsletter. Just head over to my website, nostalgictravelco.com, and hit subscribe. Until next time, keep exploring and keep making those unforgettable travel memories.